Okay, so what's with tritones?
So I walk a little too fast.
Literally, tritones are two tones 3 whole steps from each other, or a tritone apart. So what makes them so important, and why do they function as they do? Tritones, wherever you find them, don't like to be together. They're like magnets facing at the same poles. They want to move away. They tend to drive things apart. It's this tendency to create tension and then resolve to a tonic that mysteriously drives the music of Western tonality. You could say that Western music is a kind of perpetual motion machine that needs a kick every once in a while. That kick is the 7th chord, which contains tritones. I'm sure you've noticed that all the other chords of the major 7 scale either have a major dyad or a major duet, the relationship between the root tone and the 3rd, and a major 7, or they have a minor dyad or a minor duet between the root and the 3rd, with minor 7ths. It's only the 7th chord that has a unique structure of a major dyad with a minor 7th. That puts two tones close together, B and F. A good visualization for this is the first inversion of G7. Here we have B and F. Let's look at these two tones on string 6. 1, 2, 3. 3 whole tones away. These two would rather move to some tonic resolution. They don't like to be together. And while we're right here in this position, let's take a look at our number 7 chord, the B minor 7 flat 5. You can see there the same two tritones. They're acting in the same manner, which is why B minor 7 flat 5 can act as a stand-in as G7. It actually spells G9 without a root. If we consider for a moment that B minor 7 flat 5 is actually D minor 6 inverted, we can see within the inversions of this chord all of the tritones. Here on strings 2 and 3, and in the first inversion of D minor 6, and here in the second inversion, all of our tritones, all behaving in the same manner. And while we're here in this position, let's take a look at the third inversion of C sharp, D flat 7. There you see the same two tritones. This makes C sharp, D flat 7 the tritone chord of G7. It has our two tritones along with a flat 9 and a flat 5. The tritone chord of any dominant is its tritones with two alternate tones, flat 5, flat 9. And just before leaving this position, let's take a look at one more chord, B diminished 7. Notice the same two tritones. In fact, the diminished 7th chord is two sets of tritones together. This chord is standing in for G7 also. It spells G7 flat 9. Here we have G7. We can mask the root with a 9 and flatten it. G7, 9, flattened. two sets of tritones. So how can this knowledge of tritones be helpful? Let's say, for example, we have a 1-6-2-5 progression. A minor, D minor 7, G7. We want to enhance this a little bit more. We could use a diatonic substitute, E minor 7, for the tonic chord. Now, with the dominant 7th chord, we could use its tritone chord. We could play this as a 9. So we would have this. Now we could substitute the 6th chord and make it a secondary dominant to the 2 chord. In other words, we make it a 7th chord, in which case we would have this. And we could do the same thing to this A7 chord by using its tritone chord. Here we're playing as a 9th. So now we would have this. A little more interesting. Let's take a look at that tritone chord on A7, or E flat 9. Here we have our tritones. The interesting thing about tritones is that regardless of what register they're in, they will still act in the same manner. So if I bring this G back up, these two tritones are still behaving the same way, driving towards a resolution. But if I choose these two voicings, it frees my hand up to capture other tones within the scale. For example, I could get the 4. That would bring an 11th into the chord in the upper register. Also, I could grab the 6. Here's our tritone with the 4 and the 6. Now we have an interesting sounding chord based on the tritone of our secondary dominant. We could do the same thing in this position for the dominant G7. Now we would have this. More interesting sounding. By the same token, we can take our diatonic substitute, E minor 7, and drop the 5, forming this chord. This is actually C6/9. Here's our root, here's our 3rd, here's our 6. And we could do the same thing for the 2 chord. Drop the 5, bring the 4 in. So we would have this. Much more interesting sounding 1-6-2-5 as an intro. Okay, I hope you learned something. I hope you can use it.